Free golden birds for War Thunder. Inspect the app in the description below.
Hello everybody and welcome to another video. Yes. Now today's subject is something slightly different, as over a year ago I made a video titled My Top 10 Favourite Vehicles in War Thunder. A critical success, I might add. And as such, in the comments there were thousands of messages. Well, there were hundreds of... Alright, there was one that I saw it. There was one comment that said I should make a video about the vehicles I really hate driving. Or flying. Anyway, I replied to said comment and said I wouldn't rest until such a video had been produced. And today, here are my least favourite vehicles in War Thunder. I apologise in advance. The Churchill gun carrier. Ugh. The term tank destroyer has never been attributed so loosely as with the Churchill gun carrier. Ugh, I mean, how Vauxhall came up with this, I won't ever know. They took a widely successful tank and did this to it, which is probably why it never saw combat. The Ministry of War saw it and probably had everyone involved lined up against the wall and shot. I know I would. Oh, what's that? You're the one who designed the superstructure. Oh, okay. Bang! Thud. Dribble, dribble, dribble. Now, in some ways, you can see what they've tried to do here. They've looked at a German Jagdpanzer IV and thought, yes, that's what we need, a top-rate gun on a small, easily concealable chassis. Yeah. So what we actually have here is a German Jagdpanzer IV done on the cheap, with none of the good bits. And despite that, I actually think this tank performs fairly generously in War Thunder, considering. You won't see squadrons of these things sweeping over Berlin anytime soon, but compared to the dire, arse-ended cock-up it would have been in real, actual war, it's generous. So, it's got its problems, but occasionally it does indeed kill things. What's that? You want a list of its particular problems and failings, do you? Well, I'm sorry, but we don't have such a... no, wait, here's one. Firstly, it's slow. By God, is it slow! You might as well commute to the battlefield on Southern bloody rail! I mean, God only help you if you've taken this heap of crap out into North Africa, because no one else will. Then there are the two hilariously sized elephants in the room. Its size and length, because not only is this thing the length of the bloody Maginot Line, it's even more vulnerable to flanking attacks. Then there's its solid-shot AP-only firing gun. Compare it, if you will, to that of this Skoda, the gun of which can deliver a wider variety of shells to your doorstep that weigh more, penetrate more, and make you wish you'd chosen a smaller tank more. And then finally, and most importantly, number 4. It's the worst-looking tank in the entire world. But wait, let's hear its positive attributes. Oh no, hang on, here's one. It has 89mm of frontal armor. Because what else can you do when your brand new ambush tank destroyer ends up being larger than the factory it was built in? You can't very well hide the bloody thing, I mean, look at it! So what do? I'll tell you what you do. You slap a load of completely flat-faced armor on the front, which nearly always works, maybe, and then call it a day. Between you and me, I think the designers realized that the only chance you've got of hiding this tank is if you drive it into town and disguise it as a pub.
Oh, Bier. Warte mal.
Now, this aircraft gets a lot of bad press, and not just because it's made of wood, nor is it because it's held together with glue. No. This aircraft gets a lot of bad press because it's a Heinkel 162. It does have one or two minor problems, which make flying it unpleasant. First and foremost, it does get a tad warm. Now, fundamentally, as an Englishman, anything over a steady 23 degrees C is far too hot, and that is why this aircraft makes this list. Why, from the second you start rolling down the runway, your engine will begin to bake itself. And whilst you can cool it by climbing to altitude, it's not worth it. As thanks to its lead balloon-like climb rate, by the time you get to altitude, the bloody war will have ended.
Aus welchem Jahr kommst du denn?
Which, come to think of it, is probably why the Heinkel fight so many Bearcats and Thunderjets. And well, since the 162 is an energy fighter, if you don't manage to outclimb these newfangled aircraft that you've never seen before because they're from the future, you'll be in trouble, as the vast majority of them will not only outclimb, but also dance all over this thing in a turning engagement. Hell, even the bombers will make you think twice about a dogfight. Then comes the acceleration. Put simply, it don't have none. However, I've heard its top speed is good, apparently. And would you look at the state of this cockpit? Sure enough, you could talk this thing into coming down. Oh yes, and all the dials and instructions are in Bosch talk. But don't worry, as I happen to possess a first-rate command of the German language. Right, now this bit here most likely says, don't pull negative G's in this aircraft, because unlike British designs, this airframe is unreliable and can't take it. It then goes on to say something like, oh, but only if we had some Spitfires, we could win the war. Well, there you are, their words, not mine. Next up, anything French. Specifically, the D521. Now, I don't dislike this aircraft just because it's French. No, that would be petty. No, I hate this aircraft for many valid reasons that I could justify to you at any time. Anyway, moving on. We better do this properly.
no.
I don't want to get a reputation for having it in for the French. Heavens no. So this is the cockpit, and oh no, it's very hard to see out of here. Yes, that being said, 5 stars for safety, as I believe that big red plunger there is a trigger that jettisons the canopy and deploys our parachute. Yes, and ironically, you can't see backwards in this aircraft. Now let's cut straight to the point, shall we? Why, let us compare this aircraft to a Messerschmitt 109 of equal rank. Quite simply, the Frenchman has drawn a rather underwhelming hand. Not only is a 109E3 slightly faster and narrowly more maneuverable, but it also climbs twice as quickly as the D521. But all these things can be overcome by sheer piloting skill and ability. However, no matter how brilliant a pilot we are, it's when you dance your way onto an inexperienced enemy's tail that's when the real fun starts. Now on paper, all looks well and good in the firepower department. 4 machine guns and a Hispano cannon. There's nothing wrong there. Why, we the British use Hispano cannons, which means they're obviously brilliant. But however good the gun may be, if you've got no ammunition to fire out of the bastard, it's just a large cannon-shaped paperweight. 60 rounds is all you get for this 20mm cannon, and let me tell you that in the heat of a dogfight, that lasts about as long as Churchill's weekly cigar ration. But what about those 4 7.5mm French machine guns, I hear you asking? Well, there's good and bad news on that front. The good news, you get 2,700 rounds of ammunition. The bad news, they're all made of pastry. It's quite possible you'll fire everything you've got at one target and then run dry before he's done the decent thing and blown up. Then, well, you just best hope that he's laughed himself to death in the chase, or he's gonna turn around and blow you out of the sky. Oh dear. Now I know what you're all asking. You're all asking, what the hell is that? Well, that, my dear viewers, is the Japanese Type 2 light tank. And already, I think we can all see why it makes this list. But though its looks alone should be enough to condemn this tank, let us delve deeper and give it a fair trial by asking the key question here. What makes a tank a tank? The answer, mobility, armor, and firepower. So let us review these aspects. And note, I use the term tank very loosely indeed with this particular specimen. Now, the Type 2's 37mm gun isn't anything to complain about, but what it's housed in? Oh, God. Yes, that's right. Inside of 2 minutes, you too can turn your turret all the way around, giving you more time to blast away at all the Americans, which have no doubt surrounded you on some island somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. Moving on. Now, whilst this tank isn't slow, it is very dangerous. More than a few times now, I've lost it in a corner, the back end stepped out, and I've careered off the road into a tree. And let me tell you, usually the tree comes off better, as the Type 2 isn't armoured in the traditional sense. Or in any sense, really. I don't think you can call 6 to 10mm armoured without breaching the Trade Description Act. For example, let's see if this armoured plate can stand up to Mother Nature's most basic form of weaponry. Why, yes, it's a Russian with a machine gun. Yes, well, when a machine gun makes you think twice, I think you need to question what your tank is actually for. But I think I've cracked it. Now, those of you with keen eyesight may have spotted the intriguing set of propellers on the rear end, which I cunningly suspect render this vehicle amphibious. Now, needing to sail the 7 seas would explain the lack of armor. Now, to test its proficiency in the water, and in an attempt to save its reputation, we shall plot a course toward England, whereupon I shall strike the Type 2 from this list and deem it a brilliant coastal patrol vessel. So, man the riggings, raise the anchor and get us underway. Oh, that shagged that then. Well, at least it makes for a very good midget submarine. Yeah. The Yak-15P. Ah, yes, now it's quite easy to see what's happened here, but for those of you without an engineering degree, I shall expand. Now, what the Russians have done here, in all their genius, is taken a Yak-3, which is an alright aircraft, and then hammered a jet engine to the bottom of it. And then, well, they've not done anything else, really, that's it. So I think you can see where this is all going. So let's sum up all the good points about this aircraft, shall we, to begin with? Good, absolutely top pole, that's all that done. And now for the list of bad bits, which is almost everything. I tell a lie, it is everything. Now let's start with the top speed, shall we? Now, if you're traveling at futuristic jet speeds, you want your airframe to be purpose-designed and built to withstand the strain. And let's put it this way, shall we? If I was building my very own aircraft, and somebody asked me where I plan to procure my wings from, I wouldn't say a 50s Russian factory. Why, they do high-quality finish and rigorously tested and reliable gear, don't they? Well, let's find out, shall we? So here you see an enemy aircraft, in this case a German 262 at low speed and at sea level. And so you begin to chase, but oh no you don't, because your wing was apparently put together by a Russian farm labourer wearing a very thick pair of mittens. So, a jet fighter that can't well exceed 450 miles an hour for fear of instant disassembly. It also doesn't climb well, not that you should even consider doing so, as surprisingly, there are no air brakes on the Yak-15P, and descending in altitude usually brings about an increase in airspeed, or as Yak-15 pilots call it, death. However, the Yak does have one useful trait. That being that it can maneuver its way out of trouble, like a greased member of parliament. So let's say you've made your way onto your enemy's backside, and you open up with your 123mm cannon, with all 60 rounds. Yeah. That doesn't seem like enough, but to combat my concern about the appalling ammunition count, I've referred to the Yak-15 handbook. Now, this book is in Russian, but don't worry. As like James Bond, I'm schooled in any language a potentially sexy female spy is likely to converse in. So let's give this handbook a pop, shall we? Now it says here, in Russian, "To all great pilots of the glorious Yak-15P, it is ordered that you keep your eyes open whilst firing at the fascists. Should you blink and miss all your shots, ski." Then there's a few backwards R's and some other symbols, but if you peek through the iron curtain of propaganda, the handbook also says it doesn't have enough ammunition. Yeah. And here we go. My least favorite vehicle in War Thunder is the fairy swordfish. Only joking. What? The hero of the North Atlantic? My least favorite aircraft? No, that was just a small April Fool's joke. Granted, it's not even March yet, but this video was becoming insanely time-consuming to make, and I was planning ahead. No, the swordfish is unequaled, a phrase that really rings true when you fly something as dire and miserable as the Blackburn Firebrand. Oh dear, here we go again. Yes, the Blackburn Firebrand, a British carrier-borne naval strike air superiority fighter, an aircraft that sets out to do everything and that quite often achieves absolutely nothing before it returns to friendly waters and plows into a friendly aircraft carrier whilst attempting to land. This aircraft has a host of hellish traits, as it did in real life, but at least real pilots weren't ordered to use it as a dogfighter just so they could unlock the bombs. Right. Get ready for a list. I've got one prepared. Here we go. List of things that are crap about the Firebrand. Oh, it's quite long. Yes, you'd better get some provisions. First off, it's a British carrier-based naval strike fighter that can't actually operate from a British aircraft carrier in this game. Now, either the Fleet Air Arm had an almost inexhaustible supply of rotor assemblies and propellers, or War Thunder's not quite modelled something correctly here, as every time you land, your propeller will shatter into 1,000 pieces! And once you're down on the deck of a carrier, getting back up again is no easier, as due to the unique and nimble size of British aircraft carriers in this game, departing from one in an aircraft that's as wide as Goering's dinner table will also result in a horrific crash. Did I mention it was also far too heavy? Well, I have now, and it is. The Firebrand also doesn't have any redeeming flying traits. Its cruising speed is so low, it's illegal on most motorways, and it climbs badly. And don't get me started on the maneuvering. Why, if you're carrying a payload, you won't be able to roll your aircraft around without starving the engine and plummeting into the sea. Then there's the turning circle, which isn't so much a circle, more a sort of circumnavigation of the Earth. Unless you ditch your payload and use your combat flaps, which you probably won't have, because they'll have flown off whenever the bloody hell they like. But moving past these flaws, say you make it into visual range of an enemy ship, with your torpedoes still attached. Well, in order to drop it properly, you've got to slow down to stall speed. No problem, as the Firebrand has a pair of air brakes. I hope you're all seat-belted in, as they're a pair of whoppers, aren't they? Surprisingly, they don't really affect the speed that much. So you've got to cut the power to your engine in order to deliver a torpedo. This all makes you a rather large, sitting, goose. As aircraft go, there are none out there that I despise flying as much as the Blackburn Firebrand. I hate it. I hate it. Why, ask me what I'd sooner fly into combat, the Blackburn Firebrand or the Swordfish, an aircraft that was outdated before it was designed. And I wouldn't struggle. The moral of today's video is, just stick to what works best. The fairy swordfish, the best aircraft aircraft in the world. I sincerely hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, please dispatch a like via carrier pigeon, and also let me know what vehicles you really hate. I'm interested to hear what you've got to say on the subject. Anyway, I'd like to dedicate this video to my Patreon supporters, as always, in particular this week, a fellow by the name of Tanner Dixon. So, thank you very much, Mr. Dixon, and I'll see you all next time. Cheerio!